Have you ever stopped to think about why being smart can feel more like a burden than a gift? Why is it that some of the most intelligent people you know often seem isolated, while those with average minds flourish in social circles? It's not just awkwardness or coincidence. Arthur Schopenhauer, a philosopher known for cutting through illusions with brutal honesty, figured this out almost 2 centuries ago. Schopenhauer believed intelligence acts like a mirror, not a flattering one, but the kind that reflects back what people try to ignore about themselves. And most people, they don't forgive you for showing them what they're not ready to see. It's tempting to brush it off, say brilliant people are just bad at socializing or too introverted. But Schopenhauer noticed something far deeper. He saw a pattern that repeats itself across cultures, across centuries. Put a highly intelligent person in any room, and even if they stay quiet, something shifts. People become uncomfortable, tense. The air changes. Why? Because their presence alone shines a spotlight on what others feel they lack. You see, society doesn't mind most types of superiority. We admire wealth. We obsess over beauty. We cheer for strength. But intelligence, that's the one that makes people squirm. It challenges egos. It forces self-reflection. And that creates resentment. A quiet, buried kind of resentment people rarely acknowledge even to themselves. So how did Schopenhauer piece this together? Born in 1788 in Germany, Schopenhauer wasn't some armchair academic locked in a tower. He lived through this stuff. As a young lecturer, he deliberately scheduled his university classes at the same time as the wildly popular philosopher Hegel, a man Schopenhauer considered intellectually shallow and dishonest. The result? Hegel's classes were packed, Schopenhauer's were empty, but instead of sulking, he started watching, observing, studying the human response to real intelligence versus palatable nonsense, and what he saw disturbed him. The smarter someone was, the more they got pushed aside, not because they were arrogant or condescending, but because their very presence made people feel smaller. He saw this happen again and again, at social events, in academic halls, even among so-called friends. The rejection wasn't always overt. It was often subtle, passive, quiet, but it was always there. Thanks to modern neuroscience, we now know Schopenhauer was spot on. Recent studies in psychology show how the brain reacts to perceived intellectual inferiority, and it's intense. MRI scans reveal that when people feel intellectually outmatched, it lights up the same pain centers in the brain as physical injury. That phrase, bruised ego, is more literal than you'd think. A 2021 study showed that being exposed to someone clearly smarter than us activates the amygdala, the part of our brain that handles fear and threat detection. In other words, intelligence doesn't just challenge us mentally, it triggers a primal defensive reaction, like a silent alarm going off inside. And it gets worse in groups. When we're alone with someone smarter, that pain response is mild, but throw a crowd into the mix and it spikes. Big time. Why? Because we're wired to protect our social standing. In public, ego becomes status. And when a smarter person enters the room, it's like our subconscious says, "You're losing ground. Catch up, or take them down a notch." But Schopenhauer didn't stop with just brain reactions. He dug deeper into the social consequences, the behaviors, the patterns. He realized that people don't just feel uncomfortable around intelligence. They twist that discomfort into something else. Assumptions. Assumptions that the smart person is arrogant, judgmental, condescending, even if that person hasn't said a single word. And here's the strange irony. The more intelligent someone is, the less likely they are to judge others. But that doesn't matter, because it's not about what the smart person does, it's about what they represent. A reminder of inadequacy, a reflection most people don't want to look at. That's why you'll often hear people mutter things like, Ugh, they think they're so smart about someone who never once claimed to be. Intelligence becomes a threat not because of anything it says, but because of what it implies. Now here's where it gets even more complex and more revealing. Schopenhauer observed that this resentment doesn't affect everyone equally. For intelligent men, the pushback is often direct. Arguments, dismissiveness, or being subtly edged out of social groups. But for intelligent women, the battle is doubled. Society expects women to be likable, approachable, attractive in a non-threatening way. Intelligence breaks that script. Schopenhauer pointed out that smart women are often forced to choose, be liked or be respected, rarely both. If she's beautiful, her intelligence is downplayed. If she's intelligent, her beauty gets ignored or even resented. He noted that a woman who's both intelligent and attractive often ends up more isolated than if she had just one of those traits. Why? Because beauty draws people in, but intelligence pushes superficiality away. It scares off shallow admirers and confuses deeper ones. Today, research confirms what Schopenhauer saw back then. Studies show that women often downplay their smarts in social settings to avoid seeming too intense or intimidating. Psychologists call it the competence-likability trade-off. The more capable a woman appears, the less likable people, men and women, rate her. It's no wonder the most popular person in a room is rarely the smartest. Schopenhauer nailed it. Mediocrity is comforting. It reassures people. It tells them, hey, you're not missing anything. We're all on the same page. That's why average minds often rise to the top of social hierarchies. Not because they're exceptional, but because they never make anyone feel inferior. Think about casual conversations at social gatherings. They stay on surface-level topics, predictable jokes, familiar stories. Nothing too deep, nothing that forces reflection. Because as soon as someone brings up a complex idea, you can feel the tension creep in. The smiles fade. People glance around, unsure how to respond. That discomfort, that's the mirror being held up. Schopenhauer saw this same pattern in art, in literature, in culture. The mediocre creators, the ones who never challenge or stretch the audience, got rewarded. They got the exhibitions, the book deals, the praise. Not because people couldn't tell they were average, but because average feels safe. And now, nearly 2 centuries later, we're still living inside that same dynamic. Only now it's on full display. Online, in the workplace, and in everyday interactions. Take a look around, scroll through social media, sit in a meeting at work, or just observe who gets the most attention at a party. Schopenhauer's insights are still unfolding in real time, just in newer packaging. That one brilliant coworker who always seems to eat lunch alone? The thoughtful, nuanced post that gets ignored while a half-baked meme goes viral? That's not an accident. That's the same pattern Schopenhauer described, just dressed up in digital clothes. Even at companies that claim to value intelligence, something weird happens. Ever notice how the people who rise the fastest aren't necessarily the brightest minds in the room? They're often the ones who know how to make others feel smart. We don't reward deep thinkers. We reward social smoothness, emotional calibration. We say things like culture fit or good soft skills, but what we often mean is they don't make people uncomfortable. Let's call it what it is. Being smart comes with a social tax, and most people don't want to pay it. Even in places built on ideas, startups, universities, think tanks, you'll see the same trend. Simpler ideas get more traction. Hot takes go viral.